guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I am feeling pretty good this week. How are you?
I'm doing great. Are you feeling good this week because you have a birthday coming up this week?
I was actually thinking about Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow.
Okay.
And of course, when this comes out, all of this will have already passed. But yes,
Right.
it's a very exciting long weekend coming up for me after we have Thanksgiving, which is my favorite food holiday ever.
I feel like it's the main food holiday.
It is. I just like Thanksgiving food so much. I just am so excited to be able to cook and eat, which that's my plan. All day tomorrow, I'm just staying home. I'm excited to be home with my kids and my family and my house full of pets and just being in my own kitchen and cooking all day. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then, yes, my birthday is this weekend as well. So just all around good times.
Nice. Making fresh cranberry sauce this year?
Of course, absolutely. And
Perfect.
I assume that you are not.
Double cans in the fridge right now. I'm raring to go. Wondering every year why I don't eat it more often. Like, why do I just wait? It's
I'm
like
pretty sure
I
you can
tease
actually
myself.
get it year round.
Oh, you can. You can. I see it all the time. I might have to make some changes this year. Maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution as we get a little closer. But real quick, I had an exciting week. I got to finally go see my sister get sworn in.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was very official. Like they put her nameplate up there and stuff. And they had snacks, which I wasn't expecting to have like open snacks and like fruit and stuff, but that was great. And I got to see one of our listeners and dear friend of the show, Karen, and meet her daughter. And Karen said hello to you.
Oh
and
my gosh.
her granddaughters, like they were all so freaking sweet
How
and
exciting.
cute.
So
Yeah.
fun. She just happened to be there.
She loves my sister. So
Oh my
she's there
gosh.
for like, yeah, I know. The people that love my sister, just the list just goes on. But yeah, she was there to support her, which was really, really sweet. So yeah, it was awesome.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah. I feel like it's just been a whirlwind of a month. Once again,
Right?
we can't grasp the concept of time around
Nope,
here.
never.
But November truly did fly by, and it's hard to believe that we're already at the end of the month and getting ready to start December. And we have a lot of exciting things happening in December, don't we, Melissa?
It's going to be awesome. I'm very excited. So yeah, Mandy, you want to get started on the episode, this first episode of the month?
Of course. So the story this week comes to us from Maybe, Michigan. And I don't mean that the story might be from Michigan. I mean the tiny town is actually named Maybe. And they have declared that they may be the best little town in Michigan. I don't know why that just tickles me like to death. I love small towns, and I think that's adorable. So with a population of just over 500 people, this is the type of place where everybody really does know everybody. But in October of 2014, this close-knit community was rocked by the disappearance of 22-year-old Chelsea Bruck, who vanished after a Halloween party. Chelsea Ellen Bruck was born on January 28, 1992 in Trenton, Michigan, becoming the fifth child to her parents and completing their family. Chelsea and her siblings were raised on a farm in Maybe with a lot of love and a lot of humor. Chelsea was always smiling and cracking jokes, and she really was just the light of her family's life. She and her sisters, who were also known as the Bruck girls, were extremely close, and their childhood was spent enjoying time with each other and playing with their beloved pets. Chelsea had a range of interests, from baking and reading to musicals and video games. She loved listening to Queen and watching Doctor Who, and she had dreams of pursuing a culinary degree at Monroe Community College. In October of 2014, she was working as a hostess at Olga's Kitchen in the mall. She had a bright future ahead of her until her life took a tragic turn on the night of October 25th. That night, Chelsea had plans to attend an annual Halloween party at a farm in Frenchtown Township, about 10 miles from her home. This party was really more like an event. There were hundreds of attendees expected, and Chelsea had been working really hard on her poison ivy costume for about 6 weeks, and she was hand sewing everything, including these artificial ivy leaves, onto a leotard.
Whoa.
Yeah. So at this party, there were two large tents set up and several metal bands were going to be playing. And so there were people that had come from up to 3 states away just to go to this really special Halloween bash. Chelsea got a ride to the party with her friend and coworker Laura, and they arrived there shortly after 10 p.m. The party was crowded with 600 to 800 people in attendance, possibly more than that, but Chelsea actually knew about 15 to 20 people at the event. Though she was a bit shy with newer acquaintances, she and her friend Laura hung out and mingled for a little while. But by midnight, things took a small turn when Chelsea accidentally walked into a tent pole and hurt herself. She actually ended up with a noticeable gash on her face. Around 1 a.m., Chelsea and Laura got separated, and by that time, Laura's sister had to leave because she had to be up early in the next morning and she needed the car. So at that point, Laura just decided that she would go ahead and head out with her sister. Since she didn't really know exactly where Chelsea was, Laura left Chelsea's belongings, which included her purse, her phone, and an overnight bag, with another friend named Becky. But when Becky tried to find Chelsea to give her things, she also couldn't find her, and eventually Becky gave up and left the party alone. Chelsea was then left stranded at this party without her phone. Witnesses later said they saw her wandering around the party asking people if they could borrow a phone so that she could call her friends for a ride. But despite making several calls, including one to Laura as well as 5 other people, nobody was able to come back and get her. By 3 a.m., she still hadn't been able to get a ride, and she was seen walking with an unknown man towards the parking area. This man was described as being a white man with a medium build and dark hair, and he had a thin mustache and wore glasses. Witnesses said it looked like he was comforting Chelsea before they disappeared into the night. But Chelsea never returned home.
The next day, nobody in Chelsea's family was immediately alarmed by her absence because they had known that she took an overnight bag with her and assumed she stayed at a friend's house that night. But after nearly a full day had passed and Chelsea still hadn't come home, they started to feel uneasy. At some point, Becky sent a text to Chelsea's mom, letting her know that she had Chelsea's phone. And later that evening, Chelsea's sister messaged back saying that Chelsea still had not come home. When there was still no sign of her on October 27th, her parents reported her missing. A search was led by the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and Chelsea's family, and her friends and other volunteers scoured the fields and woods near the party. They set up a search headquarters in a vacant bank building, and they handed out flyers and posted purple ribbons throughout the area. A Facebook group dedicated to finding Chelsea quickly grew to thousands of members, and within a few days, the story had made national headlines. Investigators interviewed over 100 of the party attendees, and they waded through hundreds of tips. But it was challenging due to the fact that many people had been in costume and drinking alcohol, so people had a hard time recollecting the events of the night. I didn't even think about that when I was first looking at this story, realizing like, oh yeah, well, I was talking to the Joker that night.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Everything has just got to be so confusing and misremembering and everything else. One thing they did learn for sure was that Chelsea would not have disappeared on her own accord. She had even texted her sister Cassandra the morning of the party and talked about how excited she was for her upcoming wedding. So her family knew she wasn't choosing to be gone. According to Dateline, people started talking about this person called Big Mike, but it was really unclear how he fit into the whole story. Police searched Chelsea's bedroom and spoke to her friends and found out that while Chelsea wasn't in a relationship at the moment, there were some guys that she was interested in. These men were looked into, but ultimately it was learned that they weren't at the party, and there was no evidence to suggest that anyone she knew had picked her up. But this Big Mike guy was still on the radar, and the police believed he knew more than he was letting on. He actually said no when they asked if they could search his home, so they actually had to get a warrant to look through his house. They ended up digging through a huge bonfire pit on his property, but they didn't find any sign of Chelsea there. The search grew from a 5-mile radius around the party all the way to the county line, with searchers going door to door asking if anyone had seen Chelsea. They walked through cornfields and forest, but they still didn't find anything.
The search for Chelsea consumed her family, friends, and the community for months, but by January 2015, things had kind of seemed like they stalled out. The police had chased down over 600 tips, some of which were even revealed to be deliberately false, such as this one time where a 29-year-old woman falsely accused her own ex-boyfriend of murdering Chelsea and dumping her body in a cemetery.
That's insane. Insane.
Yeah, that's truly the only word for it. And in another case, a 19-year-old man claimed that he witnessed Chelsea being abducted by two men at the party. And that was, again, determined to be just completely made up. And so both of these people were charged with making false reports and, of course, wasting precious resources.
Good.
While the police are in the middle of trying to find what really happened to her. So finally, on March 22nd, a woman named Cheryl was at her home on War Road in Monroe County when she stumbled across a random red shoe while she was cleaning up her yard. She happened to live just 2.3 miles away from where the Halloween party was on a piece of partially wooded property. Chelsea's mom instantly recognized the shoe as belonging to Chelsea, which made the first break in the case and really the first piece of real evidence that they had been able to find in 5 months. Weeks later, two men found more pieces of Chelsea's poison ivy costume. They found a leotard and wig in an abandoned building by a railroad track in Flat Rock in Wayne County. At first, these two men were actually reluctant to report that they had discovered these costume items, but one of the men decided to come forward after he actually saw the costume on a missing persons flyer, which, oh my gosh, thankfully he decided to report it.
Yeah.
But I always wonder about how often something like that happens because I've even had times when I'm out hiking or I'm taking a walk and I see something like strange that doesn't belong, but I don't necessarily like call the police. But it always makes me wonder how often like evidence in an actual case is overlooked or is not reported because people are just like, this is either, it's nothing, or they don't think it's suspicious enough to call the police.
Right.
So the police examined the leotard and they found that the straps had been torn and the crotch area was cut, and that suggested that there had been a violent struggle. Chelsea's blood and DNA belonging to a man were found on the fabric, but they did not get a match when they ran the DNA through the CODIS database. Although these findings were heartbreaking, Chelsea's family held out hope that she might still be alive. Her mom, Leanda, told the Detroit Free Press that she didn't know where her daughter was, but she wasn't giving up until she found her. She worked tirelessly to distribute over 1.25 million flyers across Michigan, Ohio, and beyond. Sadly, several weeks later, on April 24th, the grim truth finally came to light. A man named John was out working on his wooded property near train tracks in Monroe County when he discovered human skeletal remains under a heavy log and branches. This area had been bypassed by searchers due to there being a no trespassing sign posted on the property. The remains appeared to belong to a woman with blonde hair, and dental records later confirmed that they did belong to Chelsea. Her death was ruled a homicide, with the cause of death being inconclusive, but the police believed the killer was familiar with the rural area. Months later, the cause of death was determined, but the police kept it a secret because they wanted to save that information to use as guilt knowledge. And we have so much more to get into after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
Some of my favorite holiday memories happen right at home. There's nothing better than the smell of cookies baking, the glow of twinkling lights, and the little details that make this season feel so magical. This year, I wanted to bring even more warmth and charm to my space, so I turned to Wayfair.
Same here. Wayfair has everything you need to create holiday magic on any budget. I just ordered a gorgeous garland and some festive serverware for my dining table, and it all arrived quickly and the delivery was free. It's like they knew I needed a stress-free holiday setup this year.
And that's really what I love about Wayfair. It's so easy to find exactly what your home needs. I grabbed some cozy throw blankets and candles for the living room, and they instantly made the space feel ready for holiday movie nights with the family. Whether you're looking for cookware, tree trimmings, or even last-minute gift ideas, Wayfair has you covered.
Exactly. And the best part is how budget-friendly it really is. The holidays can get expensive, but Wayfair helps you create the perfect festive atmosphere without overspending. So if you're ready to deck the halls or you just want to make your home cozy for the season, check out wayfair.com.
Set the scene for new holiday memories with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now to get your home holiday ready. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. You know, Mandy, some things in life are totally fine to leave to chance, like taking a gamble on a cheap Instagram ad impulse buy or even rolling the dice on a new takeout spot.
For sure. But you know what shouldn't be a crapshoot? Finding the right doctor. That's where ZocDoc comes in. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and much more.
Exactly. With ZocDoc, you can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, and match your specific needs. You can even see real appointment openings and book instantly. There's no more waiting on hold forever or trying to guess who's the best option. I've actually used ZocDoc several times to find specialists, and recently a dentist for my son that was actually in network with our dental insurance. They were actually great, and booking was really simple.
And the best part? These doctors are all reviewed by verified patients, so you know you're getting someone who's highly rated. It's the easiest way to take control of your health and make sure you're getting the care you need without all the guesswork. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments.
I use ZocDoc and you should too. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/mysteries to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/mysteries. ZocDoc.com/mysteries. And now back to the episode. So before the break, we were discussing the disappearance of Chelsea Bruck after attending a Halloween party. And 5 months after this party, her remains were discovered. Chelsea's family was devastated when they got the news that her remains had been found, but they were determined to seek justice and find the person responsible. On April 28th, they had a vigil to honor Chelsea's memory. The investigation continued, and in September, more of Chelsea's belongings were found on John's property, including her other red shoe, green tights that were turned inside out, and an artificial leaf from her costume. In 2016, police released surveillance images of a man who resembled a sketch of the last person seen with Chelsea, and they asked for that person to come forward. The man did come forward, but he was ruled out, and the search for the real killer continued. On July 20th, 2016, police were alerted to a match in the CODIS system from the DNA that was found on Chelsea's leotard. The DNA was matched to a 27-year-old man named Daniel Allen Clay from Newport, Michigan. It was learned that Daniel had been at the Halloween party that Chelsea was last seen at, and he actually had mutual acquaintances with her. In fact, the mother of his son worked with Chelsea, and they were friends. After this point, Daniel had never come up in the investigation, so police really knew very little about him. They did find out that he had 2 kids with 2 different moms and another baby on the way. He was also known to couch surf and crash with whichever girlfriend he had at the time. He was also unemployed, and he had warrants out for unpaid child support. Daniel had a lengthy criminal history dating back to 2007 that included assaulting, resisting or obstructing a police officer, and possession of marijuana. His DNA was actually collected on May 11th, 2016, after he was charged with larceny from a person for stealing a backpack that had tattoo equipment inside of it. These charges were later dropped, but the DNA remained in the system, which is what led to the match from the DNA on Chelsea's leotard. On July 22nd, police started to look for Daniel. They planned to arrest him for unpaid child support, not murder. So they went to his home and they knocked on the door, but no one answered. And suddenly, Daniel burst through the back door and he took off. He was eventually booked for failing to pay child support, but he was not told that he was a murder suspect. Police made small talk with him about his kids and about life in general, and he learned that Daniel had been homeless, but he was popular with women and had 2 kids. He said his motto was peace and love, and he didn't like fighting or violence. He just liked to smoke weed and have sex.
Eventually, the line of questioning became more serious, and the detectives brought up the Halloween party. Daniel told them that he left the party by 11 that night, but said he didn't know Chelsea and he never even saw her. One detective finally asked Daniel point blank if there was any reason why his DNA would be on Chelsea, and he said, "Not to my knowledge." And then when they told him that his DNA was in fact on her, he responded, quote, "I didn't do anything to that girl. Did not, I'm telling you." Soon enough, Daniel admitted that he actually did have sex with someone in his car at the party and that it might have been Chelsea. But if it was Chelsea, he said that she had gotten out of his car and walked away. Daniel seemed to indicate that he thought the DNA the police had found was from semen, but it actually wasn't. And remember, they're kind of keeping back a lot of details so that they can, use this for guilt knowledge later on. But the DNA they actually found was skin cells near where the crotch of Chelsea's leotard had been ripped. Daniel wouldn't say anything more than the fact that he had sex with a girl, random girl. So in an effort to try and get Daniel to start talking, they actually lied to him and told him that Chelsea had brittle bone disease and she might have been killed on accident. So at this point, Daniel asked to take a break. He says he wants a cigarette, and when they resumed the interview, he's back with a new story. Now he said that he did have sex with Chelsea at the party, and then after the party, he saw her walking along the road carrying her wig. She was allegedly intoxicated, so he said he asked her if she wanted a ride. They drove down the road for a bit, and then he said they had consensual sex again in the back of his car. He said that Chelsea had removed her own clothing and that during this second sexual encounter, she started getting aggressive with him and was biting him and telling him to choke her. Daniel said he obliged, and he said he started lightly choking her for maybe 20 to 30 seconds, but then suddenly she went limp and he couldn't get her to wake up. He said he actually attempted CPR, but when she didn't respond, he freaked out and put her in the back of the car and drove 30 to 45 minutes away to figure out what to do. He said he drove to some train tracks about 10 miles away from the party, and then he carried Chelsea's body from the car to the woods until he was too tired to go any further, and at that point he hid her body under some tree branches. Daniel said he sat there for about 30 minutes and cried before he was able to leave, but he said he didn't remember dumping Chelsea's costume at an abandoned industrial site. He told the investigators that he wasn't a murderer and that he'd said of himself he couldn't kill a mouse. After this confession, Daniel was charged with second-degree murder. At that time, the police didn't believe that the murder had been premeditated.
I love how smart the police were in their interrogation with him to come up with the brittle bone disease, that someone could have done something by accident,
Right.
which really opened the door for him to say, oh yeah, well,
Right.
that's exactly what happened.
Right.
And really confess whether he meant to or not. So after he was behind bars, Daniel called his girlfriend and told her what was going on. But shockingly, what he told her wasn't quite the same story that he had just given to the police. Daniel told his girlfriend that he had killed Chelsea, but that it wasn't an accident. His girlfriend was horrified and devastated. She said, quote, "The whole time we were dating, nothing bad ever happened. My mind is just so twisted right now, I don't even know what to think. And him calling me from jail doesn't help. He said he loves me. I just want the truth to come out and be done," end quote. Daniel was arraigned on second-degree murder charges on July 25th, and he told the judge that he didn't want bond, which the judge happily agreed to have off the table. Is this like a hero thing? I don't really understand why you would even say that.
I don't either. I have no idea.
Good.
I mean, I feel like in some cases, these perpetrators, like, they act like they think doing things like this is going to get them like a lighter punishment or something. I don't know. To me, it's like silly because, like you said, like, good, thank you. Nobody wanted you to have that anyway. So that just made everyone's life easier.
Yeah, nobody's going to be like, wow, this guy, he
Right.
sacrifices. So obviously, let's do something for him. On August 8th, 2016, Daniel was charged with criminal sexual conduct and home invasion that occurred back on June 9th, which was about 2 months before he was arrested for Chelsea's murder. In that case, Daniel met a 21-year-old woman who we'll call Sarah, and he met her when he and 2 other people went to the apartment complex where she was staying. They drank vodka before the three men, including Daniel, left. But then Daniel came back and barged through the door unannounced. He attacked her, hitting her on the side of the face and dragging her off the couch by her hair. Sarah said that Daniel forcibly removed her clothing and dragged her to the bathroom where he sexually assaulted her in the tub and then turned on the shower. After Daniel fled the apartment, Sarah called for help, and when the first officer arrived, he said that Sarah was so distraught that she had to be handcuffed to a gurney for her own protection and for the protection of the paramedics. She actually asked the officer to shoot her, and it was clear that she was obviously in a very disturbed state. This is so sad.
So sad.
Police actually spoke to a teenager who lived in the same building who said she heard someone screaming, "No," and "Stop." When the police questioned Daniel about the rape, he gave very different versions of what happened. On September 22nd, Daniel was charged with concealing Chelsea's body after prosecutors said they reviewed the facts. Once again, Daniel, the hero, said he didn't want bond. But the investigation was really still far from over. Police were still waiting for the autopsy results so they could see whether Daniel's story of how Chelsea died could be verified. By the end of October, the results were in and it was clear. Daniel was a liar. It was determined that Chelsea had actually been beaten with a blunt object and suffered fractures of her nose, eye sockets, and jaw, and she had 2 chipped teeth. Her body was actually too decomposed to look for signs of strangulation, but they said it would have taken around 2.5 minutes of sustained pressure to choke Chelsea to death, not these 20 to 30 seconds like Daniel was claiming. So there was no way that this death was some kind of accidental strangulation. The new theory was that Chelsea was beaten and raped, and that she died as a result of this attack. Chelsea's friends said this story made a whole lot more sense because they knew she didn't like to be choked and would have never told Daniel to do that to her.
Charges were upgraded to open murder in November, which meant a grand jury would decide the final charges, and that could either be first-degree murder or second-degree murder. First-degree murder could be proven either through showing premeditation or proving the deliberate murder or murder committed during the commission of a felony, which is also known as felony murder. Since it was believed that he was committing criminal sexual conduct when Chelsea was killed, Daniel was eligible for the felony murder charge. Daniel tried to have DNA evidence suppressed in the trial because he said that his DNA was unlawfully used, and this honestly made me so mad. Since they collected his DNA after he had been arrested for that charge earlier that was eventually dropped, he was saying that they shouldn't have been able to use that to match his DNA in Chelsea's case. However, of course, his DNA was collected perfectly lawfully when he was arrested at that time, and then they just kept it in the system after the charges were dropped, which I feel like they should. If you ever get your DNA collected by the police, it should stay in the system.
Well, and also, it's not like he just stopped doing bad things when Chelsea was killed. He just kept doing stuff and kept getting caught. Like, his DNA was in the system. It was going to be in the system that day, the day before, whatever. He's just reaching.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what prosecutors actually said. They said that his DNA was already in the system from a 2015 felony conviction, and inevitably they would have discovered it in August of 2016 when he was arrested and charged in the home invasion and rape of Sarah. So basically they were saying eventually he would have, popped up as a match for the DNA on Chelsea's leotard one way or the other. Kind of like you were saying. Like, it's not like he stopped committing crimes. He was still out there doing it. So they were going to catch him one day.
Right.
So his motion to suppress the DNA evidence was, of course, denied. He also tried to suppress his confession because he claimed that he had tried to invoke his right to an attorney, but he was denied. For this one, he was actually granted a hearing, and they focused on 2 statements that Daniel had made to the police. In the first statement, he told the detective, quote, "If my DNA is on her, then I think I need a lawyer, but I have no idea how my DNA was on her." So when the officer told Daniel that, if they were to get him an attorney or let him find an attorney, all questioning would have to stop. So Daniel then agreed to keep talking, and he even said the words, "I do not want an attorney."
What do you think his attorney thought when he heard that? Like, of all things you could say, you clearly said, "I do not want an attorney."
Right. Like that's not what you want on the record.
Right.
He said that. And so just a note here, like an interesting thing, like when it does come to invoking your Miranda rights, You actually have to be like crystal clear that that's what you're doing. You have to say, very clearly that you do not want to speak to the police and you want to contact an attorney. And if you're wishy-washy and you say things like, maybe I need a lawyer, I'm not sure, those things aren't going to cut it. And the police aren't going to be jumping for joy to get you an attorney. Like, you have to be very, very clear to say, I don't want to do this interview. I need to talk to a lawyer before we talk anymore. So the judge ended up finding that Daniel was very clear when he said, I do not want an attorney.
Oh my gosh.
At that point in the interrogation. So therefore, the police did not do anything wrong by not getting him an attorney. So according to court documents, in the second statement that they were looking at in this hearing, Daniel had asked, may I have a lawyer brought here to speak while you're here today? Can we do it right now so I can ask the lawyer about my rights before I say anything more? So the detective testified that he understood Daniel's questions as Daniel asking if he could have an attorney come in right then. And so the detective replied no and said that they wouldn't have, the people available for this until Monday, but said that they could stop the interrogation until then. So prosecutors argued that Daniel's question could have also been taken more than one way, and it wasn't really a clear enough request for counsel. So Daniel admitted that he did understand he could tell the detective to stop talking to him at any point, but he said he was scared to speak up and he just wanted to try and figure out what was going on. And he thought he would be viewed less favorably if he asked for an attorney. In the end, the court found that Daniel did not make any clear demands to have a lawyer, so his motion to suppress his confession was denied. Daniel also tried to challenge the admissibility of his statements because he claimed that he wasn't of sound mind during the interrogation. He said that he had drank the last couple shots of vodka he had, and he also took a couple of Vicodins and some other pills, and that resulted in him having a buzz when he was talking to the police. But authorities disagreed and said, from what they saw, he did not appear to be intoxicated, drugged, or ill in any way. And we have more to get into after one last break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
Is it just me, or do the holidays make it way too easy to overspend? Between gifts, decorations, and hosting, I feel like my budget just kind of disappears. And don't even get me started on all those sneaky subscription charges.
Oh, I know. That's why I started using Rocket Money. And let me tell you, it's been a game changer. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. They found a couple subscriptions I totally forgot about, one that I haven't even used in months. Rocket Money canceled it for me in just a few taps.
Same here. They even alerted me when one of my bills went up, and they helped negotiate it back down. That extra savings has really been so helpful this holiday season. And plus, Rocket Money lets you see all of your expenses in one place, so it's easier to stick to your budget, which is something I desperately need this time of year.
Right? It's like a holiday miracle for your wallet. So if you're ready to keep more of your money where it belongs, on things that actually bring you joy this season, download Rocket Money today. It's free to get started, and it could save you hundreds. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's features.
Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/moms. That's rocketmoney.com/moms. rocketmoney.com/moms.
Melissa, have you ever wondered what's really going on with your metabolism? Like whether you're burning fat or carbs and how that impacts your day?
Oh, definitely. The older I get, the more I feel like my metabolism is really just this unknown variable. And that's why I've been using Lumen. It's this incredible handheld metabolic coach that helps you understand your metabolism in a way I never thought was possible. You literally just breathe into it first thing in the morning, and it tells you if you're burning mostly fats or carbs. From there, it gives you a personalized nutrition plan tailored to your body.
I like it. It's really all about helping your metabolic health, and that's huge because your metabolism affects everything: your energy, your sleep, even your fitness results. It's like having a health coach in your pocket. Lumen even tracks things like your cycle and menopause, adjusting recommendations to keep your metabolism on track through hormonal shifts. It's been so helpful for understanding what my body needs to feel its best.
If you're ready to take charge of your health and unlock the secrets of your metabolism, check out Lumen today. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/moms to get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/moms for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. And now back to the episode. So before the break, Daniel is getting ready for his day in court, and he has filed some different motions claiming that he was not given an attorney when he wanted one, claiming also that he was drunk during his interrogation, asking his confession to be thrown out. And so far, no one's really buying it. And so we're on to May of 2017. On May 8th, 2017, Daniel's trial began with jury selection. Once the jury was seated, prosecutors actually offered him a plea deal. If Daniel pled guilty to second-degree murder, he would get a 35-year sentence. Daniel rejected the offer, and the next day, opening statements began. Two very different versions of events were presented, with prosecutors describing Chelsea as a vulnerable young woman who was alone at night without her phone, who was then taken advantage of by Daniel. They alleged that he beat her, violently removed her clothing, raped and killed her before discarding her body in the woods. The defense didn't deny that Daniel was responsible for Chelsea's death, but they framed it as an accident that happened during consensual sex acts. They argued that he should be found guilty of manslaughter and claimed that Daniel had no motive or intent to murder Chelsea. The jury was tasked with deciding whether or not Chelsea's death was intentional or accidental. Daniel actually took the stand, and he gave his account of what happened that night. He admitted that he was intoxicated after drinking 2 pints of alcohol, smoking marijuana, and taking narcotics like Xanax and Vicodin. So he admitted that his memory was hazy, but he did recall meeting Chelsea at the party. According to Daniel, Chelsea was upset, so he started talking to her and flirting with her, which ended in the two of them going back to his car to have sex. But he said they stopped after a few minutes. Later, he said he saw her walking alone and offered her a ride home. He claimed that it was actually Chelsea's idea to pull over and have sex again, but this time things became rough and Chelsea went limp while he was choking her. Again, this, he says, was at her request. And when he was unsuccessful in reviving her, he panicked and drove to a wooded area where he hid her body and tipped a heavy log over her remains to conceal her. Daniel said that he did not mean to kill Chelsea.
Prosecutors dismantled Daniel's story bit by bit and accused him of tailoring his testimony to fit the evidence. But they pointed out numerous inconsistencies in his story, including the fact that during his initial interview, he had told the police that he didn't know Chelsea at all, and he didn't mention that he had taken drugs or that he tipped a log over her body. A major hang-up was also the fact that Chelsea had extensive facial injuries. But Daniel explained that they probably occurred when he accidentally dropped Chelsea's body 5 or 6 times while he was moving her from the car to the woods or from the log that he put over her body. He said, quote, "I don't know about the injuries she sustained. I don't know how they happened." Medical experts took the stand to refute what Daniel was claiming. A forensic anthropologist said that although it was remotely possible for the jaw fracture to have resulted from a fall, she would expect there to also be injuries to the bridge of the nose, which there weren't. She also said it's highly unlikely that the injuries were from the log because the large surface area of the log would make the type of injuries that Chelsea sustained unlikely. Instead, she said that the injuries were consistent with repeated blows. She compared the injuries to the trauma that is seen in car accidents. A medical examiner for the county also testified that the specific location of Chelsea's jaw fractures made it unlikely that they were caused by a fall, and that the blunt force trauma Chelsea sustained was severe enough to have caused her death. The defense's own expert even agreed that Chelsea's manner of death was homicide. In closing statements, prosecutors used a rubber dummy to drive home their point that Chelsea was brutally murdered. They grasped the neck of the dummy and shook it and said Chelsea didn't die accidentally. On May 16th, after deliberating for just a few hours, the jury reached its verdict. Daniel was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and concealing the death of an individual. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing hearing, Chelsea's mom handed Daniel a Bible and told him she forgave him but would never forget what he did. She made it clear that her daughter's memory would never fade, and neither would the pain caused by Daniel's actions. Daniel actually accepted the Bible, and he even thanked her for giving it to him, and he said, quote, "I'm sorry for everything. I know I caused pain to the family and to the community. I made a mistake, and I'm truly sorry for what I put you through." Which,
mistake is kind of a wild thing to say there.
yeah, it's a little bit more than like an oops, I did an accident, but I will say that I was actually surprised considering this guy's history and everything that he even apologized at all. That's not, you don't see that. I feel like the families don't even get that in most cases.
Well, typically, you're right. They get something like, "I'm sorry for whoever did this to her. I'm the wrong person,
right,
but I'm sorry that you're going through that." You're right.
The judge that presided over the case didn't extend the same grace that Chelsea's mom did, though. The judge said that it was clear to him Daniel was a liar, a rapist, and a killer. Prosecutors called Daniel a monster and said that his defense was a desperate attempt at hiding what he had done. Chelsea's mom, Leanda, took the opportunity to share the important message that everyone should always go places as a group or with a buddy and to never leave your friends alone. That's one thing I also want to drive home in this story, is just not to leave your friends alone, especially if you're a younger person who's going out and doing fun things. I love going out to like concerts and events, and of course I don't like crowds as much, but you have to use the buddy system like you really do when you go out with people, just to stay safe.
For sure. Even though Daniel was convicted and sentenced to life, prosecutors wanted to be sure that he would stay behind bars in the event that he tried to appeal. So they took him to trial for first-degree criminal sexual conduct in early June of 2017. They were not allowed to bring up the murder conviction, and their main evidence was Sarah's testimony. She told the court how Daniel had burst into her apartment uninvited, struck her in the face, and dragged her off the sofa before forcing himself onto her and eventually dragging her into the bathroom where he raped her. They also brought in the witness who had heard Sarah's screams that night and the first responders who encountered a very distraught Sarah. The defense claimed that the sex was consensual, and Daniel took the stand and said that Sarah let him into the apartment and willingly participated in having sex with him. During cross-examination, prosecutors scoffed at Daniel's version of the story and said he had done nothing but lie to avoid the truth. They questioned why and how Sarah would make up such a story and then be so hysterical that she would actually ask the officer to shoot her. They asked Daniel if he was, quote-unquote, a ladies' man, and he said yes. And then I vomited in my mouth a little.
Ugh.
In closing arguments, the defense asked the jurors to look at the evidence. They said that despite the web of lies that Daniel had weaved, Sarah also had inconsistencies in her story, and that the truth was that the two of them had consensual sex. They said, quote, "He might not be the most likable guy on earth, but the facts speak for themselves," end quote. Gross. Prosecutors argued in their rebuttal that it was rape and that Sarah had been through something so horrible that she literally wished she was dead afterwards. They said, quote, "He's not a ladies' man. He is a rapist. He hit her in the face. She's helpless. He rapes her, drags her 20 feet by the hair like a dog on a leash, and then cowardly runs out of the apartment. A ladies' man? He's a coward," end quote. In the end, the jury saw through Daniel's lies, and he was ultimately found guilty of criminal sexual conduct, but he was not found guilty of home invasion. For the criminal sexual conduct charge, he could be sentenced from anywhere between 18 and a half to 39 years. Daniel asked the judge to sentence him within those guidelines and said that he, quote, shouldn't be railroaded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't get it. He ended up getting sentenced to serve, though, between 40 to 75 years, which is actually double what the sentencing guidelines called for.
Good.
Totally. The judge said, quote, "This was a brutal rape. You're just an opportunist and a predator. You're a liar, and now you're a serial rapist," end quote. The judge said that last part because during Daniel's murder trial, 2 women came forward to report that Daniel raped them as well. In these cases, the girls were 13 years old at the time, while Daniel was 16 or 17. Of course, Daniel eventually appealed his murder convictions and sentences in Chelsea's case on the grounds that there wasn't enough evidence to find him guilty. He said that his testimony about Chelsea's consent outweighed the prosecution's case and that his intoxication minimized his faculties. So therefore, it somehow negated his intent to kill. Thankfully, though, under Michigan law, being intoxicated is not a defense to any crime. Daniel's appeal was denied, and as of today, he is incarcerated at the St. Louis Correctional Facility in Michigan. He will be behind bars until the day he dies, as long as he doesn't have a successful appeal. Mandy, I was actually surprised that he not only testified in the murder trial, but then after that, still chose to testify in the next trial. We don't see that a whole lot.
Yeah. I don't know what his angle was. It seemed like he really did think that he was going to be able to talk his way out of it. Yeah. Or at least talk his way into a less severe charge or, a less severe conviction. I don't know what he was thinking from going from I don't even want bond to don't railroad me.
It is wild. And the nerve to say that to the judge, I've already been through enough.
Right.
Come on, don't do this to me. And meanwhile, now we have 4 women, Chelsea, Sarah, and then these 2 other that have come forward or were killed or attacked, saying that they've been raped by him.
He belongs behind bars for life. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely just a very, very sad story.
It is.
But that was the episode for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we hope everybody enjoyed their little holiday break. Hope everybody is enjoying the season. And we'll be back next week. Same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.